Okay, let's address the end. Let's address death. Uh, Run over this fairly quickly, and it wraps up the developmental process. It's pretty simple. They won't spend a lot of time on this. It's not depressing. I mean, it's the way things wind up for everybody. So let's look at a couple of attitudes uh, related to how humans deal with this thing. And when you're an adolescent, it's a remote consideration. There's a lot to be discussed there. Uh, and we don't really have time on a virtual one-off discussion. Suffice it to say that a remote consideration even includes the aspect of accidental death. So it's not necessarily, think of a good word to use. It's not that you ignore it, it's just not in your focal thoughts. How's that sound? Unless there's something else going on in your life. For the most part, on average, I hate the word, but we have to use it. Normal is another word that's tough, but these both fit here. It's something you know about, but it's not something you spend a lot of time on unless, like I said, there's some other thing going on up here that needs some adjustment. When you reach adulthood, and as you advance through adulthood, early adulthood is sort of like adolescence. It's not a major thing in adulthood, but there's an increased consciousness of the fact that yeah, there's a looming thing out there, but it's way down the road. Again, dependent upon what your emotional state is. A lot of other things that, again, we don't really have time to discuss. That would be a therapy session, actually. And then finally, an older adult, they begin to address the inevitability of the fact that death is maybe not so far off, and even maybe begin to plan for it in some ways. Now, there is a stage, the developmental stage theory designed by I think it's Diane Kubler-Ross. I can't remember anyway. The Kubler-Ross stages of dying theory. All right, so let's leave it at this. It's not that super important about the author. It's more important about what was researched and presented as a theory. And there have been some knocks against it. So stage one, denial and isolation. Now, this was really designed for people who had terminal diseases. But there are aspects of this that fit, quote, normal dating and recognition of the fact that you're older now and that death is, hey, it really does happen. So let's look at these stages. Keep bearing in mind that some of it fits a normal situation, but it's really designed for terminal patients. So here we go. Denial and isolation. When you're presented with the imminent death, then you deny that it's going to take place. Oh, something will happen, it won't happen. That won't happen. And then you progress to anger, and you realize and recognize that denial can't be maintained because you're not going to stop it. So you get angry. You develop resentment. You may rage. And there may be this, what Kubler-Ross called envy, which is defined as why me? Why me and not other people? And then there's a bargaining third stage, hoping that death can be postponed or delayed. Depression becomes the next stage. Acceptance of the certainty may lead, sorry about that, it was my phone, may lead to preparatory to grief. And finally, acceptance. And the acceptance stage is really a sense of peace. So the sense of peace really is the only alternative, because you've reached the end of all of these other things and nothing is going to change. So you develop this, okay, I get it. Give you a real life example. I'm very close with a person who was just out of the clear blue less than a year ago diagnosed with stage 4 lung and liver cancer. And she went through this Kubler-Ross theory, all these aspects of that theory, and now she's in her last months of life, and she has this very pronounced sense of peace with that, and she's actually very lively and upbeat, no depression. She knows that she's living the last little bit of her life. She's 70, I think. And she's lived a good life. And that's kind of what she dwells on. And she still does stuff. She doesn't sit in a chair and pine away. She goes out and does things. Her and her husband are very, very active at the moment. So it's a good live example of this, how Kubler-Ross pretty much nailed it. It's hard to argue with that. But there is some contention. Comes from psychology, of course. Some psychologists think that there should be some other considerations. You should think about some added things, maybe. What about the person's situation, including the relationship of support? What are the specific effects of whatever the illness is if it's a patient? And again, I'll remind you that this Kubler-Ross deal was mainly designed or really researched related to terminal patients. People worry about family obligations, and I'm going to talk a teeny bit about some of this in a moment. Emotions may come and go. Hope, disbelief, bewilderment, anger, acceptance. Some people never reach acceptance. And psychologists say, rather than this be stage developmental, it just may be emotional reactions. Now let me backtrack here. And let's talk about non-patient people. Let's talk about the average person who's approaching the end of their life. None of us really know unless you've got an illness and the medical side says, okay, here are the averages and you're at this point and here's how severe your condition is, or it's not quite as severe or whatever. And so you wind up you wind up with a period of time to consider things. So okay, well, in the case of a non-diseased kind of just getting old thing, you begin to consider things like family obligations. When I pass, who's going to take care? Who's going to pay the bills? Or who's going to clean the house? Who's going to mow the yard? Who's going to get the oil changed in the car? So on and so forth. And so this is where Kubler-Ross and psychologists who are on board with Kubler-Ross in its pure form say these are some considerations that should have been included. So family obligations. And then you can actually go through this hope, disbelief, bewilderment, anger, acceptance thing and not be ill. You reach your 70s and you know what the average lifespan is, at least in the Western Western societies, somewhere men around 76, 178, that kind of got messed up with COVID. At any rate, you just kind of have this awareness that all of a sudden, hey, I'm not young anymore, and death is potentially right around the corner based on my age compared to the average age that you live. And there's a kind of a disbelief related to that. And the disbelief is, how did I get here? I mean, yesterday when I went to bed, I was 30. I woke up this morning, I'm 76. And you're going, what? And I'm in the age range where people around me are dying every day. So, a little bit of bewilderment. Can there be an aspect of anger? Maybe. I don't think the anger, as a psychologist, I don't think the anger is as much from the aspect of death as it is from the aspect of, wow, I didn't get this done. I didn't get that done. I'm angry at myself. I should have done this, that, the other. Erik Erikson looks at that in stage 8, where people are resigned and happy with what went on, or they're in a state of depression, so to speak, that they didn't accomplish the goals they set out to accomplish, that sort of thing. And then the acceptance. Some people never reach the acceptance stage. The idea of acceptance, they just don't get there because they may have the attitude of what was the point in all this. So it depends on the person's attitude, and a lot of other things are related to their views related to their impending death. So that's really a good wrap for what's going on here. There are others that have looked at this. John Bowlby, I'm sure if you know anything about developmental psychology, and especially in your intro to psych, when they talked about Bowlby and the study of attachment with Mary Ainsworth, Bowlby even has a 4-phase theory. I'm not going to go deep into it. Shock and disbelief, searching and yearning, disorganization and repair, rebuilding and healing. These are the 4 areas that they introduced in terms of it being a better description of what goes on when your death approaches. So there you go. That's a wrap. That's what we wind up doing is we go through all this developmental stuff, and don't be depressed about this. Some people get to the age of the end of their life, and they're very happy. They go, you know what? My journey's almost over. I don't have to put up with these aggravations anymore from wherever. And I'm going on to a better place. You're a Christian. It's a pretty nice time to be alive, pending death. Okay, so there you are. Philosophical stuff, some of it practical, some of it questionable. I hope you enjoyed the course.